Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday weekly whiskey. We're joined this week with Blake from Bourbonr Seelbachs, since it is the first week of the month. So we're doing Craft Corner tonight. Welcome, John. Welcome, Blake. Good to see you guys.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you guys. It's finally cold here, so it feels a little different. It's been very summery so far, but it's good to get back into it.
Yeah, we're having like the exact opposite problem. We had like 2 days below 70, and it's like, oh, okay, it's Florida. We can kind of cool down a little bit, and it's like, nah, it's gonna be 85 again today, and still wear a hat zip to keep up. But
yikes!
I think it was 68 today, and I was like, oh, a little toasty. Ooh.
Yeah. We had the opposite.
Oh, good. Well, welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Let us know what you're drinking in the chat. We'll get quick away with the Our Bourbon News. If you guys took part, you joined in the Penelope MGP blend that we did. We got word from Danny and Michael that it has been bottled. They were supposed to send us pictures of the line, but they forgot. But it's been bottled. Blake can back it up. And I think it's going to hit Seelbachs tomorrow. So in the next couple of weeks here, we should be seeing that guy come to market. And I think that's about all I have for Our Bourbon News, but I'm pretty pumped about that bottling. If you guys have seen the Breaking the Seal labels, they look sweet. Ours are going to look similar. I'm pretty pumped for that guy. In fact, John, you have a bottle. I think we both bought one of the Breaking the Seals yet, but we haven't tasted it yet.
I don't even think I've opened the damn box they came in.
Oh, you still haven't opened that box?
We actually sent you the wrong bottle, but don't.
Oh, man. That's right. Yeah, you have kids and stuff, I guess, so.
Yeah, and a stockpile of your whiskey that has been landing at my door while you're back in the move.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Seelbachs, you guys stopped shipping to Wisconsin. So I was like, I'll just send it all to John. And then I told him like 3 days later, like, hey, so there's 5 boxes on the way. And I hope your wife's okay with it, but they're all going to show up at your door. I think that's where they stayed.
You can blame it on Jay. Like, no, these aren't my boxes, I swear.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a blank check.
I've got a stack of whiskey as tall as Jay next to my bar right now, so
I love it. But yeah, thanks for joining us, Blake. This is Craft Corner, where we talk about craft whiskey in America, which I'm super pumped about. We had a great time last month. I think we did Pinhook mostly, which was pretty eye-opening. But this week we have a whole spread. So if you want to go ahead and introduce us, Blake, let us know what you're talking about tonight.
Yeah, so we definitely hit Pinhook last week, and so for this one, kind of some new things we have in at Seelbachs. I feel like this kind of embodies craft and what we're trying to do at Seelbachs, and so some interesting things. So the first one is it's a bourbon. It's a 4-year-old bourbon finished in Nocino barrels from Watershed Distillery. The second would be a Duality double malt from ASW. That's also a single barrel we did, and then finally it's a Rolling Fork rum, who I'm sure a lot of your listeners are probably familiar with Rolling Fork and what they're doing. The guys out of Kentucky, but this was a 12-year-old bourbon, 12-year-old rum we sourced from Foursquare. So all kind of 3 cool stories, how they came about, how we got the barrels. A few of them have been a long time in the making. So yeah, I mean, they just happened to all land at the same time. So I figured, why not? Let's jump on here and talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, it's cool. I was looking right before this and I was like, oh, ASW, what does that stand for? And I Googled it. And that apparently, I don't know if you have any insider info, but everything I saw was just ASW. And I was like, ooh, that's mysterious.
Yeah, so it's American Spirits Whiskey, I think it is. Or, oh, shoot, what is it? I think that I should know this offhand because, but I think it's like American Spirits Whiskey, which is okay. Sounds like the most generic.
It's like somehow specifically
American Spirit Whiskey. So it's funny. The other day, a guy, I was telling him what I did, and he was like, "Oh, cool. A friend of mine has a distillery. We love his stuff, American Spirit Whiskey." I was like, "Oh, I've never really heard of them. Where are they based out of?" He's like, "Oh, up in Atlanta." I'm like, ASW? He's like, yeah. I literally never heard them referred to as American Spirit Whiskey before until this guy said it like a week and a half ago. And I was like, oh, I just bought a whole barrel from them and it went on sale last week. I guess should have done my research too on what ASWX
Oops.
is for. I figures like the guy's initials or something, or I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too because I was like, I'll just look at the label and I was like, is the front in Gaelic? That's not English.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just destined to never know what this means.
Yeah, which it is. I think it really is Gaelic or something. But yeah, cool, really cool brand, and we'll get into them a little more and kind of what they're doing different. But
Sure.
yeah, we're kind of talking before the show of how we should taste these in what order, because they're all just, it's like, you know, throwing 3 different curveballs, you know, the curveball inside, the curveball, you know, or maybe 3 change ups in a row. We're going to call this the Chuck Knobloch tasting. Yeah, so for the first one, I would say be fun to jump in with is the Watershed. So
Okay.
on this one, it was interesting. So I was talking with Aaron Goldfarb, who you probably know from his book Hacking Whiskey and all the other bourbon writing he does, and just like, hey, what barrel finishes have we not seen? So we did one from Finger Lakes Distilling where we put it in a what do you call it? It's a dessert wine. It's a I'm blanking on that right.
Like ice wine.
Ice wine?
Yeah, so it was an ice wine finished. Haven't seen many of those. Then the other one we did a rye from Treaty Oak that was finished in gin barrels. And then this one, he was like, oh, there's this distillery called Watershed out of Ohio where they do a barrel-aged Nocino. It would be cool to put it in that. And I'm like, well, I've never had Nocino. And so get Nocino. And I'm like, oh, wow, why has nobody, like, I feel like if you don't know, Nocino's it's a green walnut liqueur. So they take green walnuts, whatever they do, I think they macerate them and then sweeten it up, add some spices, all the stuff you do to a liqueur. And then, you know, Watershed's twist is they barrel age it, or black walnut. Yeah, sorry, Max. So the flavor notes really pair well. And so I talked with Watershed. They're like, yeah, we love the idea, but we're going to need you to commit to the whole barrel before we just go and throw
Seems fair.
53 gallons into something we've never done before. I'm like, oh, of course, I'll try it. And so we did that in September of 2019. And the first sample they sent, I thought, oh no, what have I gotten myself into?
What have I done?
And I've actually kept the progression of samples, because then monthly they would send me a sample. And I'm like, you know, is this one of those things on paper? It sounds amazing. It's like, you know, I don't know. I love golf and I love bourbon, but maybe I shouldn't get drunk and try to play golf.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So we started tasting it every month, and really, in all honesty, the first 3 months, I was just kind of like, oh man, like, what are we going to do here? Do I have to procrastinate on replying to these emails for a while and see what happens? And then it was like all of a sudden, really about April-ish, March, April, the sample, I'm like, okay, I kind of like where this is turning. And so by July, I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. Like, color on it was phenomenal. And then because of all the shutdowns and everything, it ended up going about another month. Or no, hold on. So it would have been pulled in July. So I think it was June where I was like, oh wow, this is really good. Let's go ahead and pull this. And so they were great. You know, they went ahead, and luckily they were kind of working on another project with a 4-year-old bourbon finished in apple brandy barrels. And so they kind of had a label, and they were able to put a Seelbach's neck tag on, as you can see in this picture. And it turned out really well. So, you know, if we want to dive in a little bit, I think, you know, so in total aging was 4 years, 9 months.
Okay.
Because of right at 4 years old whenever we went into the Nocino barrel, but it's 113 proof. It's just, I don't know, it's just kind of crazy to me. And I'm interested to hear what notes y'all get, because
crazy is a really good way to go into it.
Yeah, like you do get, there's a little greenwood, but then it's like backed up with like cinnamon and like real pepperiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that cocoa comes through right away.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny too because I'll admit, and this is kind of shameful for me. It's kind of like when I realized that Dennis Rodman was a basketball player. But I've been drinking Watershed gin for a long time, and I didn't realize that they had like well-aged whiskey on the market. So to see a 4-year coming out of them I was like, oh, hey, those gin people also make whiskey. And I was like, wait, I think they're whiskey people that make
Hold
gin.
on a second. Yeah. Which it is interesting. So like their 4-peel gin is really good, and then they have their what is it? The gilded gin.
Gilded with the chamomile.
Yeah, that I really like that. But they've been around for 10 years, and I mean in the the craft distilling world, that's like they might as well be old timers in the game at this point. But I think a lot of people didn't realize that they do have a lot of stock of older whiskey. So, which what I like about this is I think you initially pull some of that residual sugar from the liqueur, but then there's like an interesting bitterness to it, and I'm.
And the wood is definitely there too. Like it's not too sweet. Every time I see a whiskey finished in a liqueur barrel, I'm like, is this going to taste like liqueur? But
and that was my worry was, and I think that's where, like, their bourbon is definitely more of the, the oak forward bourbon.
Okay.
And I think that's what kind of turned me off a little bit at first, but then that actually ended up rounding it out a little bit better down the line. I don't know, but it's barrel strength. It actually opens up really nicely with water. I think it's one of those that you may want to let sit for a few minutes with a few drops of water, and it just kind of, I think that brings out a little more of the sweetness and the spiciness. But
there's a
shitload of spice in there.
Yeah, that is a spicy, which is kind of nice. I was afraid it was going to be too sweet, but lots and lots and lots of spice to go along with that walnut note.
Yeah.
And I'm glad someone correctly picked up on black walnut bitters in the chat, because I'm sure John has been itching to throw those in here.
Yeah, I was just waiting for a good chance to slip that in. This is like half of Manhattan already.
Yeah, that's a good analog.
So that's where I kind of think, and I think it sounds bad to, who is it? Fred Minnick, who they always give a hard time. They say, this is a good cocktail bourbon. But right. I do think some bourbons lend better for cocktails than others, Yeah. Where like this, you can sit and enjoy it. And it's different. It's not going to be your nightly sipper where you're going to have 3 glasses of it, but I think you can play around with it and, play off some different bitters and all that different stuff. And it makes really interesting concoctions.
Man, though, that has a really rich mouthfeel for being under 5 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's probably all that just addition of the Nocino. I think that lends a lot to that. Which, have either of you tried their Nocino? I know you've had their gin, Jay. But
I have you. I was drinking some of that before this, since I noticed the Nocino was on the bottle, and that's some pretty good stuff too. Like Nocino is really hard to find, at least here in America, or like good Nocino. And the influence is like really stark here, but in a good way. Because sometimes like Nocino can be really like green and woody, and sometimes it can just kind of taste like cocoa. That's a good point you made about the cocktail bourbon, because like, the first problem, like some bourbons, like, oh, I'll throw this in a cocktail, and then once you add bitters, the bourbon just disappears. It's just it's gone. Like this,
you might even get away without the bitters in this.
Yeah, this would duke it out with the bitters. Like this and some vermouth and like
I was gonna say here's our cocktail. We're gonna add ice and a splash of simple.
And a half ounce of vermouth, and then you've got yourself a whole new wild ass cocktail.
Yeah. We'll wave vermouth over the bottle, and then we'll call it a day. That's right. I mean,
we call that the weekly Manhattan.
I like it.
I could see this. Like I've had some weeks where I'd be like, I'll just pour this on ice and like we'll see what it does. But no, this. Yeah. What's impressive is the finish is like. The palate is kind of hot, but it's really bold. It's really spicy. It's really rich, but it has a really gentle, gracious finish, which I was like, oh, this might be kind of fiery, because there's so much going on in the palate. But on the finish, it's pretty gentle actually, which is
that heat rolls right off.
Which is weird because I feel like typically a little more youthfulness or proof shows up in the finish, whereas this is almost the inverse. It's like you don't get it much on the nose, but you definitely get some heat on the taste and some hotter notes. But then, like you said, on the finish, it works off really well, and it is really good. It has a good long finish.
Yeah, I agree. And that's
a real long finish.
Typically, that's where craft whiskey just lights me on fire. I'm like, oh, the palate was all right, but the finish, this drank 160 proof, and it's.
I feel it. It starts up here and comes.
It lives to haunt you for a while, but this is very much the opposite.
Yeah. Which for me, this is, it's a lot of fun to sell some of the MGP products that we have, and they do really well, and it's cool to see people excited about it and trying different things with it. But for me, it's like, if I had a choice, that's kind of a little more of the passion of trying something that hasn't been done before with a distillery who most have not heard of probably as a whiskey distillery, but they've been around for 10 years. So for us I say us, the royal us, for me, I love projects like this, and I do get excited by them. And it was awesome to try them once a month and see how it came along, see what the label looks like. And they're just great people to work with. So it was cool to see that one actually come to fruition.
Yeah, that's cool stuff. So did you take the whole barrel right now, or did you dump half of it? And we
took the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I knew you were on the hook for it all. I wasn't sure if you were going to let some sit around for a while to get extra.
There's a few that'll be okay with that, but for this one,
okay.
I was a little bit worried because, like you said, you could go over and then you get nothing but dry cocoa, and so it was kind of like, if I feel like we're at a good spot now, let's just go ahead and pull it and get it bottled, because I like it, enjoy it, it tastes good, but I don't want to be 6 months down the road and be like, so could we find a port wine barrel to throw this in now?
Let's round this out a little bit.
Bring it back.
Yeah. This is we probably went too far in those dry toasted notes.
Thanks for the experiment, though.
Yeah,
I think that's a good call. I was just curious, if they went for the no chino pitch, maybe they go for some crazier.
I
think that's putting no chino
further. Yeah, if they took them up on that, let's see what else they do. You want to do it for free?
You guys want to throw this in a Sprite barrel? Come on.
Yeah.
There's a little teaser for next week's guest here on Weekly Whiskey. We're going to have Dan K on here from Dank Syrups. I don't know if he actually calls it Dank Syrups or if he calls it Dan K Syrups, but it spells out the same either way. Put some apple spice syrup in this thing. Yeah, you'd be off to the races.
Yeah, I would enjoy this neat. This would definitely go good on a cube, I think. But the cocktail potential for this is out of this world, since so much bourbon just gets beat down by every other cocktail ingredient, whether it's vermouth or bitters or, some of the fancy wines. But that's cool stuff, especially, at the barrel proof, I think it really shines. Weaker than this, I think the no chino would just dominate. So I'm glad you guys went for barrel proof.
Yeah, and that's kind of the interesting part too, is seeing it, from my perspective. I'm sure there's master tasters and everything that know all the ins and outs, but some barrels, they just do better at a lower proof. I know we all love barrel proof, but they shine a little bit better at a lower proof. I think Michter's just kind of figured that out with a lot of their 10-year-olds and everything. Would we love a Michter's 10-year barrel proof? Probably. We don't pay a lot for it, but I don't know. I think they do a really good job blending it, proofing it down to a little bit lower, and it kind of shines. But then something like this, I think it needs a little more of that heat for the bourbon notes to shine through and it not to get overly no-chinoed.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Man.
All right, you ready for the next one?
Yeah. Let's see. What do
I'm
we?
ready to see Jay get overly no chinoed.
I mean,
That's
like
what I want.
That's later on.
that's in like that happens on vacation.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was going to do ASW, which is American Spirit Whiskey, for those wondering. So this one is ASW is a distiller out of Atlanta. Really good group of guys. They do a bunch of really interesting products. One of them being on one of their bourbons they finish in Georgia. What is it? Is it pecan or is it oak? It's Georgia heartwood. So I think it is their I think it's Georgia pecan wood they use as a finishing stave. But that's not what this is. So this is the duality malt, which is it's 50% malted rye and then 50% cherry smoked malted barley. It just, I'm not a huge fan of smoke, but this one to me, I got like, you get the smoke for sure, but then I get like a ton of tobacco and like spiced plums and
the palate is totally different than what I would expect from the nose.
Yeah, the nose is, I don't know if I'm getting it, but nose I'm getting like a lot of caramel and like butterscotchy on the nose tonight.
To me, it's like a combination of like, toffee and creme brulee, and then like when you put out your charcoal grill and you come back 4 hours later to wheel it into the garage.
Yeah,
like that sweet smoke. Yeah.
Oh, it's real. And
I get a bunch of that
pipe tobacco, like
real rich sweet tobacco.
Oh man,
I told Chad, who's their head of sales, and the guy I was talking about picking with. I was like, man, it reminds me of like a freshman year field trip where somebody brought Red Man Chew and you thought you were the coolest kid because you're like dipping on it was before you got sick, on the bus ride home or anything like that. But that's almost what I get from that is
that's so funny.
Pipe tobacco, or just
real heavy leafy tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
very sweet
tobacco and like fresh leather, like when you buy a new pair of Red Wing boots and you pull them out and like
yeah.
So it's interesting. So this is actually out of a 30-gallon barrel.
That explains the color.
Yep, that because it's only like 2.5 years old. But they so they're interesting. They take like a very I don't want to say like Scottish approach to distilling, but they do grain-in distilling on a pot still. And it's very old school with like their malts and everything, but I think the products they get are just it's different than I think everyone wanted to just go make a bourbon and be off and running, whereas they were like, what we should try, do 50% malted rye and 50% smoked or cherry smoked malted barley. That's not what most craft distillers have been thinking over the last 5 to 10 years.
Oh man,
yeah,
or if they are, their name is Lost Spirits. They did a terrible job with it. Like this reminds me of like Leviathan. If I thought Leviathan was well made and had some,
but
it's a lot of like real dark fig in there mixed with there's like some spice too that I can't quite put my finger on because it's mixing with all of those other heavy notes.
It's like
very rich.
Almost.
A lot of dark fig. I get that for sure. I was trying to find what they do on there because they have their Fiddler bourbon and they call it the Georgia Heartwood, and I'm pretty sure they finish on Georgia oak stave. So they actually take oak from the state of oak trees from the state of Georgia, finish them with those staves. So they're doing all their own distilling. So that's cool to start with. But then on top of that, they're kind of bringing in some regional nuances to it as well. And that was the first. The Fiddler bourbon was the first double gold ever won by a distillery in Georgia. So they have that in their cap as well. But just one where ASW they do really well, but for whatever reason. I feel like the kind of the enthusiast community hasn't quite gotten around it, and I've seen a few more barrel picks of theirs pop up recently in some groups. So I think some of the Atlanta groups are starting to catch on and do some more picks from them, and they're just one I think will pick up over the next few years as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff. It's interesting because the nose is like really heavy on the smoke, and then you drink and you're like, oh,
yeah,
quite a bit of complexity.
Yeah.
The smoke stays in check too. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was picking from the samples, I narrowed it down to 3, and there was one where I was like, it was very light smoke, more on the caramel, more on the spice, fruitiness, and then there was one that I thought was lighter on the nose. It was almost inverse to this. It was lighter on the nose, but it was heavier on the palate, and I just didn't think that. One, I didn't love that as much, whereas I feel like this one, like, hey, you get the hit up front, you know it's there, and then you go to taste it, and it just is like, oh, hold on, what am I tasting again?
Yeah, this is super interesting. What's the ABV? Oh man, 53. Okay.
Yeah.
It does not drink like 53 at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, man, this is great for 48%. And I was like, wait, I don't think it's 48%.
Yeah, no. So it's 106 proof, and it's only 2.5 years old. So that it really just does not drink like a 2.5-year-old whiskey.
No, that's true.
And that's where I just, I love other distilleries, but then you get something different like that, and it's like, oh, it's good to have a change up. You know, if I want to sit outside and smoke a cigar, or go get a bag of Red Man and dip in the backyard.
You want to go hang out back, a big old chaw.
Yeah, go mow my grass and throw in
It's rocking dingers all afternoon.
Oh yeah, no, I had a bad experience. That one. This is as close as I get to Red Man these days.
Old Matt Spitter, yeah,
that's probably fine.
I think that's a good place to be, Blake.
Yeah, I think you did it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, so from y'all's perspective on like finding new and interesting distilleries, what are you looking for? Like, are you looking for somebody who's just like so outside the box that it's going to bring you in, or is it like, because I mean, I think about it now, like Chattanooga's done a pretty good job about doing the Tennessee high malts. It's a little bit different. New Riff just flat out says, hey, we're going to make an incredible product that's just as good as anything on the shelf. And there's a few others who just, we're going to bottle it and we'll have cool story, talk about blending, but what are y'all looking for whenever it comes to new products and smaller distilleries?
Sure. So I think it's really interesting. This parallels Chattanooga for me in a way. And what I typically like is like anyone can throw whiskey in a smaller barrel, which is fine. Anyone can throw whiskey in a big barrel and barrel it young. That's fine. I like kind of the unabashed, like, hey, we know how to make normal whiskey, so like, why don't we experiment a little bit? And this reminds me of Chat a lot. Like Chat was like, apple brandy barrel, like let's do it. Like coffee or liqueur, like let's do it. Rum barrel, let's do it. We think our base malt can hold up, and that kind of experimentation is encouraging to me because it shows like faith, or even like Driftless Glen. They said, hey, you guys distill whiskey, but we're going to send you to this conference on how you can ferment and distill honey, just because we think you might learn something about fermentation and distilling. Like, we're never going to ask you to distill honey, but like, I think it's going to be good for you to see another aspect of distilling. And then, they set up and did a rye that they were going to turn into a rock and rye, and they realized that they preferred the rye unrocked, I guess would be the unofficial term. Stuff like that is what I find interesting, because there's so many craft distillers now that it'd be easy to just be like, yep, we're a craft distiller in this town, we make whiskey, end of the line, we're not special, until they get 10 years old and can make really phenomenal stuff. But smoked without over smoking this, I think this is really interesting, and that they decided to like make it kind of hometown, like they're using regional woods and stuff that we wouldn't get in other parts of the country. And like, that's what kind of entices me, at least as a curious buyer who's pretty easy to convince into buying anything at least once. Like, Chat, like, hey,
I think that's the hard part. Like, yeah, like, hey, you can be convinced once, but are you going to come back for it is the tough part.
Yeah,
what
and
gets me
that's
a little bit too. Is
yeah,
the
go ahead.
you try to get into like, I mean, we want to try everything, right? I mean, Jay and I are both like just absolute fucking hoovers. Like, we want to get our sweaty
That's
paws
why you
on
have
like
something stacked up, 6
anything.
feet
Yeah,
high.
exactly, man. Like, we want to get our paws on everything we can. And so for me, it's about, I want to try everything I can and just see what kind of like falls into the net of stuff that I want to keep collecting. And the experimentation stuff intrigues me, but it's never like, oh shit, they're doing a XYZ brandy barrel, I have to buy that. It's, well, they've got this crazy ass brandy finish, but they've also got 2 other products that both sound pretty good to me. So they obviously have, ideas other than let's just do something loco. And when there's ideas flowing through there that sound good, I want to try them out. And it's like, for me, so Jay leans a lot towards like the chat side or even the driftless, like he was mentioning. And I'm kind of like the new riff guy where it's just like one try of theirs, and then I'm just like, anything they do, I'll try, except for maybe a backsetter. But anytime that they have something that's like, within the scope of things that I know kind of hit my palate the right way, I'm just going to keep going back to it because, like you said, I mean, they just like knock it out of the park. So I can't say enough good stuff about them, and I don't want to pump their tires all night, but I think that anybody who's going to do something and just like put out a good product from day one, be like, look, we're not going to go, sell a bunch of underaged, right? Like, we're going to, like they sourced stuff originally. They did their OKI deal to get where they needed to be. And then it's just like, all right, here we go. The doors are open. Like, let's just party and do it the right way. And they've always done it. And I really dig that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And which is funny. I told somebody this duality reminds me of what I wanted Backsetter to be. And
yeah,
it's like, I wanted it to have notes like this, but I can't, Backsetter was not my favorite from New Riff, but I can't say anything about them because they have pumped out some of the best bourbon I've seen. And really some of the private barrels we've had from them have just been so unique and different in flavor profiles.
Stupid good, man.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I've had
a 4-year product.
You think it's an 8-year-old MGP to like, we had one that was just super vegetal and grassy and just really funky. And they're kind of, for talking craft, they're definitely at the top of the chart on, but it is interesting to see them. I'm like, I don't want them to just not experiment with things because I didn't like 1 or 2 of them. So it's like, keep trying new things but also continue to pump out really good bourbon. Chris Stormer said the Riff Club's still my favorite. That was the one that was just like crazy funky. And Con 40. So I'm going to Kentucky to pick a barrel late this month. So probably will be ready mid-November. Set to arrive to your doorstep right before Thanksgiving.
There you go.
Yeah.
One of the nice things I like too about New Riff is they're like, we're really good at making bourbon, and we could just keep doing the same old, but like, why not experiment like a little bit? Like clearly Backsetter's not going to replace their bottled and bond or their barrel strength, and it's kind of cool to see people take a little risk here and there. I didn't really like it, especially since I like peated Scotch whiskey. I thought it was kind of like, oh, this is cigarette butts and whiskey, but like it was cool. Like, it's not unabashed, and like I've had the same experience with chat. Like I told them, I think the rum barrel is terrible. Like, I like everything else you do. It's like, don't stop experimenting. I just think that's
right.
And they're like, well, maybe
keep
I had
doing
a bad
crazy
bottle.
shit.
But I'm like, please keep experimenting. Like, if I thought that I was, I'll take a risk. Like, if I don't like it, then I still have it. But, same with the Backsetter. Like, I'll give it a shot. Like, if I like what you guys are doing everywhere else, like, I'll try these weird experiments. Like, what's the worst thing that happens? Like, I buy it and then I really like it and then I buy a bunch more, like.
Worst case scenario here is.
I guess worst case would be like I die, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, everything else beyond that is just life.
I guess there's also that to consider.
Like Grim Reaper edition, but.
Which it's interesting. So I didn't love the rum barrel from Chattanooga. I didn't think it was that bad either, though. But the mead, did you have the mead?
Yes, I love the mead.
Really? So it was just like so honey for me So I was drinking the mead, finished, and I went upstairs to go to bed. My wife was like, "Did you just eat honey downstairs, or what is it?" Like, no, it's just this whiskey. So for me, that was a little overpowering. But
Okay.
yeah, to each his own. But I mean, yeah, I'm kind of with you. It's like, don't stop trying things. And even I think they felt a little bit like that on the coffee of like, I know this is a little bit out of our comfort. I'm like, who cares? Like, you tried something, people are going to like it. Some people may not like it, but they'll probably try the next one you come out with too. If y'all feel good about it and I kind of trust what they're doing, like, yeah, have at it.
It's funny because I tried the rum and I was like, oh man, I do not like this. And I was like, shit, I have mead coming up next, which is even weirder. And I like kind of dreaded it for a few days. I was just like, I don't know if I'm ready. And I tried, and I was like, oh, like I really, really, really like this, you know. I was like, okay, you know, so I think the rum just wasn't for me. But like, and like the coffee, like Manifest has been doing some crazy coffee stuff. So I've been buying up one or two of those, and I was like, I'll do a coffee series at some point. So when chat really swelled, I was like, well, all right, gotta add that one, you know, like
here we go, add it in. Yeah.
Like,
I've talked with so Manifest has they've done 2 single origin coffee liqueurs now, which really interesting. So they single origin. I think the first one was Nicaragua. I should know this, and then I forget what the second one was. But basically, all the ingredients are from there. So the coffee beans are from there. The panela sugar and all the different spices, all from that country. And so I want to get like one of the barrels and finish a bourbon or a rye in there to see what that would be like. But then it's kind of scary, like the Nocino as well. Like, are we going to waste an entire barrel and this is just not going to work well together? But I think it could be pretty cool if if we could try it. I'm like, can we try it on a small scale? Can we like put a gallon in there for 2 weeks and see what happens?
That would be super cool. Like, or even do like Seelbach's like very first barrel aged cocktail. I think, you know, that's a whole other can of worms. But like, you know, once you start to open your eyes to those kind of horizons, like anything can go. And I think that's what I love to see about like craft. Before was like struggling. Like, we just got to make enough money to survive, and also make some gin and rum, and hopefully you buy that now. But like now, craft is like we can make whiskey. Like let's go crazy. Like Buffalo Trace is never gonna roll out some apricot brandy, whatever. Like, so like, why shouldn't we? And it's cool to see a lot of people grabbing life by the horns in that way, even in the middle of COVID, where I think people would have, like, I was kind of worried that producers in America were going to get super conservative, but like chat's throwing out coffee liqueurs like left and right and brandy stuff.
Yeah, let's just get weird.
Like, this stuff's coming out. Like, I love it.
Yeah, we actually have, I guess this can be the somewhat of the insider secret. So I purchased it's a blend of 3-year and 10-year MGP bourbon. And what we're going to do is we have enough to fill about 5.5, maybe 6 barrels. And then we're going to finish in 5 to 6 barrels of some of my Seelbach's favorites. So we've got like a New Riff Rye. We've got an apple brandy from Spirits of French Lick, trying to get a Privateer rum barrel.
Oh, shit.
Manifest is they have like a malt that we will probably end up using. And so tried like, hey, here's 5 or 6 different finishes, all of the same product, and play around with it. But it'll all go through Manifest. But that's where I just think that's what people really want. Like, we've had Buffalo Trace, and Jay, I saw you post about it today too. It's like, oh, we get another batch of Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, which I think is fantastic. But what are we on? Release number 15, 16? So
yeah, we got to be over 20 by now, I think.
Is it that much? And even Larceny, I know that's only on like 2 or 3, but still, it's like, oh, it's a high proof 5 to 6 year old wheated bourbon or whatever age range. So I think it is cool to kind of change it up every now and then too, to say like, all right, we've had these, we love those products, but now let's see what else we can do with it, and kind of play with the equation a little bit. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, especially since the big boys seem to like play it safer. Like Manifest, let's just do whatever, you know, like BT, if they released an apple finish something, I have a hard time believing it'd be anywhere nearly as adventurous as Manifest or Chattanooga.
No,
They also don't need it to be either. I mean,
no, they
Bourbon
can.
right now is a victim of its own success. Like those guys, they don't need to do anything different, and they're going to be able to sell out every single bottle of everything they make, which is great. Like I don't want them to stop doing it. I still want those bottles to exist, but I also want this space that we have now, where you can get like apricot brandy finished barrel bourbon. Like the things that they're putting together are just wild, and I want that to exist as well.
Yeah, and that's where, you know, like you said, I don't want Buffalo Trace to do anything different, because I think what they're doing is working and it's good for the industry in total, but they can put out something that's slightly different proof, most likely the same age range, and put Weller on the front label and it'd be sold out. Yeah, you know, with no problem at double the or triple the retail. So, but that's their market. You know, that doesn't mean another market can't also exist.
Yeah, and like the same vein as the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, like if that's what I want, like I'm super happy it's coming out. Like the new batches are fun to try, and it's nice to get the difference, but it's always gonna taste like Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. So if that's what I want, awesome. But if I want something crazy different, like it's probably not gonna come from the Heaven Hill profile. Like these mead finish this and apricot brandy finish that, and you know, smoked mullet this and stuff, which is why I think it's great. Like, you know, now any whiskey drinker in America can almost, you know, as long as you're able to source the product, like whatever mood you're in, there's a product to match. Which I don't think it was like that 10 years ago. Everything was just kind of like, this is bourbon, you know, this is a little bit.
I mean, you think about it, even well, that's about 10 years ago at this point. But when Angel's Envy came out and said that they were going to finish in port barrels, it was like, whoa, like industry changing, here we go. And you know, and that was, they were probably 09 2010ish, if I remember correctly, which seems like, you know, 10 years sounds like a long time, but it really isn't that long if we're looking at it from a wider vantage point. And that was just like crazy. I remember it was people talking in Street Bourbon about, can you believe that Lincoln Henderson is, you know, degrading bourbon by and now that just seems tame, you know, for finishes.
Well, Maker's 46 is the same. That came out in 2010. And at the time was like this like kind of weird ass thing. Like what is, so they put staves in it to make it taste different. Okay, whatever. And then you try, you're like, oh yeah, okay, I get it.
I remember.
And now it's just like shit. If they don't keep doing a new one every year, we're like, what the fuck, guys? Come on.
Like how many? Y'all gotta have some other staves sitting around, don't you? I mean,
right. Let's mix this up.
I think it was Bill Samuels. It was either Bill or Rob, but one of them saying like, yeah, Maker's Mark is like Chateau Lafite. You don't see Chateau Lafite Reserve and different. It was like, we just make Maker's Mark, and that's the crown jewel. And then all of a sudden they realize like, oh, like
we need more crown jewels.
That's right. That's classic Bill. Never wanting to do cask strength, never wanting to mix it up.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever see like Maker's 10-year. I wish we will, but you know, at least we've got some of the different staves, and those are some of my favorite makers, to be honest. Like, those are absolutely really good. But it is interesting just how that mindset has changed. And it's mostly because I think the consumer comes in, you know, you think about even as bourbon brings in from the beer world, and I know we've talked about this before, but like how crazy beers have gotten and just so outrageous. Like, I hope we don't get as far down the line, but you know, I hope we can kind of use some of that creativity in the production process. And it's a little bit easier in beer, because if you make, you know, a triple sour with ancho chilies and Mexican chocolate, like, if nobody buys it, okay, we made a small batch and we'll throw it out tomorrow. But you didn't have to wait, you know, 6 years to find out it was terrible and nobody wants it.
Yeah, exactly.
For half a decade. Let's hit Hoki's question here, and then we'll dig into bottle number 3 before we come up on the top of the hour.
So most successful experiments. I mean, So it depends on what we're calling experiment, because I think a lot of them are kind of still experimenting, but one that just kind of comes top of mind is Chattanooga. I think their whole Tennessee high malt was a big experiment. They had the successful MGP brand of 1816, and then they were experimenting with their own distillate, and I think it actually is really good. And I think maybe that's more of a risk than an experiment, but
yeah,
I think that's definitely up there.
I was going to say the Balboa Rye for me, but like that's a
Balboa,
very safe experiment, though.
Yeah, that was, I mean, that
But wildly successful.
Incredible. That was really good. I meire even just like guys using different heritage corn. So I think about like J. Henry or High Wire out of South Carolina.
Oh yeah.
And Spirits of French Lick, just experimenting with new corns and saying, hey, we don't have to use just the yellow number 2 dent corn.
Right.
Like, let's try it with something else. I think that's a successful experiment because it actually adds a lot of different flavor, and that's kind of where I think craft should focus in the direction it should be going in anyways. There's different corns for a reason, and they make a different product, and yes, you may have to use different techniques and different fermentation methods, but we can make a better product with these different grains, and that's ultimately what's going to bring people into craft.
That's a good point. I'll totally cheat. I'll throw one. I don't think we've ever talked about them, but I think Hotel Tango distillery and their wild fermented American rum is probably, I don't know if it was like the most glass cannon, like highest risk, high reward, but trying to do an American rum from sugarcane and open pit and just kind of hope that good enough yeast from the Americas wanders in, and it came out really good. But
yeah,
that's not whiskey, so I'm cheating a whole lot because you guys said Chat New Riff, which were my two. So
yeah,
I mean, but they like their bourbon's great too. Their rye is really good. Like it has no business being as good as it is for how young it is, but like their American wild ass rum is really spectacular, and I think that was a huge risk for them because wild rum is kind of like is a huge hit in its own category for like funk heads, but beyond that, like some American distillery coming out with a funky ass wild matured rum,
is not what the market's begging for. But
right. And I think like I have to convince people like trust me, it's good, which is something I don't have to do with Chattanooga or New Riff. Like you have to be like you won't go blind, just like try it, But
so it was interesting. So Richland, which is a rum distiller in Georgia who we carry, they did like a wild fermented, but basically they harvest their own, it's single plantation, or they grow all their own sugarcane, and they basically field fermented a batch and then did like an agricole style, and it was fantastic. And I'm like, why don't y'all bottle this? Like, that's not really what we're trying to do. And I'm like, okay, can I just buy like whatever?
That would be so cool.
Of this, and like literally the master distiller comes out with like a gallon glass jug, like it's just moonshine. And like, this stuff is incredible. Why are you not like?
That's so funny.
Market.
I don't know. I didn't think of them doing that either, because when we did our selection with Chattanooga, I was like, please call me when you try and do rum, like, because they were like, we have the Skunk Works, we've tried like 96 different things, and I was like, is any of them rum? And they're like, that's a good idea. Like, all right, like call me when you do rum. I think it'd be super cool.
Yeah. Happy Hokey. I'm sure I've influenced them in bad directions before. I don't know how many I've given great advice. No,
well, we got no Chino here. We got something going.
Yeah. So that one, that one they went for. There's been a couple like that, and I think it helps whenever you also say you're willing to cut a check too.
Right. I mean, you've got a buyer's group already, so it's like, hey, we're coming on board.
Hey, if nothing else, like, I'll eat the cost because I think this could be incredible. So
right. That's a good point. Like, do this crazy thing, but also I will buy it. Like probably.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I think there's a lot of the distilleries who will ask like, well, what are you seeing? And I'm sure y'all get the same question from them of like, what are you seeing? What are people interested in? And that's always fun conversations to have is like, well, you know, people want funky and they want different and they want nothing too crazy, but like, I don't think anybody's begging for more hot sauce bourbon, but if we could get like interesting finishes, I think that would be cool. So, yeah, you know, it happens from time to time.
That's
I
awesome.
like it.
Well, I think that's a great segue. Should we
Yeah,
move
they
to our
have to introduce. Yeah. So the last bottle we're tasting is Rolling Fork rum. My lighting's not that great. You saw Jay's in the background. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we got the whiskey can, which is.
And so this is, if you don't know about what Rolling Fork rum, so you may have seen like Fortuitous Union, but really two great guys bottling really different spirits because the first was a rum and rye, but mainly rum. Just some incredible selections. They did their Kentucky Cask series that was excellent, and yeah, just great guys to work with. So Jordan texted me, Morris, who's one of the owners, and said, "Hey, we've got some Foursquare barrels coming in." Well, that's been on my list for a long time, probably since before I saw the Our Bourbon get a Foursquare rum barrel. What was that? Probably 2016, 17?
Yeah, we our rum picked that. I want to say, yeah, it was 2017, and then it arrived in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Like January, it was the Triple X one.
So I did get I got a bottle of that, so Foursquare has been on my hit list for a long time. Finally got an opportunity to try one and taste one, and you know, just really happy. I mean, if you're not a rum drinker, I do suggest Fred Minnick's book Rum Curious. I'll collect my affiliate fee from Fred later on that, but and that's kind of how I got started. Was I went through that whole book, and then you realize like, all right, all rum is not Bacardi. It doesn't have to be sweet, and you realize like how lax the regulations are, and so you start searching after these traditional rums, and Foursquare is just it's a whiskey drinker's rum at the end of the day. You know, it's a lot of them go into ex-bourbon barrels, as this one did, but just a lot of that caramel, a lot of deep dark fruits, and just all kinds of stuff.
Oh man, the palate has so much weight to it on this. It's so nice.
Yeah.
This just fucking screams luxurious, man.
Mm-hmm.
How old did you say this was?
12 years.
12 years, yeah.
Man, it is good.
And so
profile for Foursquare.
Yeah, this is kind of the fun thing about Seelbachs is while we do highlight a lot of the craft distilleries, the guys who are doing their own distillate with Nocino and smoked malts, it's also working with small bottlers that are sourcing incredible products as well. And so that's kind of rounds out the picture a little bit. But yeah, this one, whenever I tasted it, I was like, yeah, I'll just sign me up.
It's great though. It's cool too, because I didn't realize that the folks behind Rolling Fork were the same folks as Fortuitous Union.
Yeah, so they've got a really funny story about. Do they tell the
Fortuitous story?
Yeah,
I at least know that one because I tried some Fortuitous. Because they bought rye and it ended up being accidentally blended with rum, or did they buy rum and it was actually
they bought rum and then the bottler dumped it into a vat. They're like, oh, who would have knew? There's 30 gallons of rye in there.
That's right.
I would have flown off the. Con 40 asked a good question of where do we see craft rum heading in the next 12 to 18 months? I mean, I think it's only going to increase. So you see in privateer, they seem to kind of be leading the charge in a lot of this. I think by bringing in a lot of the international rum enthusiasts, and so we actually, it's going to be on Thursday, have another release of Privateer, their distiller's drawer, where Privateer, they're making incredible rum. They're changing things up with how they finish it, how they age it, what kind of sugars and cane and all this different stuff they're using. They have incredible master distiller Maggie, blanking on Maggie's last name, but and then they're also like partnering with Velier and getting into that kind of international rum market to expand their brand and American rum. So I think that's where we'll only see it get bigger over the next year and a half.
Yeah, I think Richland and Privateer are probably the two to watch, without a doubt.
There's was it Lions Rum? They have some good stuff. There's another one out of Maggie's Farms. Pennsylvania. They have some good rum, and then
some weird stuff too.
Yeah, there's another one out of like Colorado or Arizona that we talked with, but they had some good one. And I think, it's all what do you want to drink. So Richland to me is a little more bourbon forward for the bourbon drinkers. It goes into New Charred Oak and all that, whereas Privateer is people who are used to traditional rums, but it's a little bit lighter in body, and they definitely have their heavier profiled rums, but in total it's much lighter body and kind of more subtle flavor notes.
This is nice though. This is admittedly, it's been a while since I've had just straight Foursquare, and it's like the moment I opened it, I was like, oh yeah.
You just smell it.
Friend.
Like it as soon as you pop that cap, it's like we know where this is going.
Yeah, it's like that brown sugar taffy, like light bananas Foster, and almost like a little bit of tire rubber. Just like always gets me from
Speaking
Foursquare.
my language.
And so here's because whenever I was first getting into rum, I'm like, man, I swear this smells like burnt plastic or tire. Yeah. Like new tire-ish kind of smell. And then I said it to somebody, they're like, that sounds terrible. But then I started hearing it other places. I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like that is the note there for sure.
Well, it's funny too, because I posted something and I forget where it was. It was a couple weeks ago, and it was like if I told you that this was like brown sugar and like burning plastic and oil and like sulfur, like whiskey drinkers would be like get me away from here.
Where's the door? I'm out.
But rum drinkers would be like, sign me up. Like, come on. Which is fine. Like there's tons of whiskey drinkers that become rum drinkers, a ton of rum drinkers that become whiskey drinkers. But I think it's the funniest thing. Like all of the bad notes in whiskey become like the good notes in rum, and like we even see it like mezcal too. Like jalapeno peppers and minerality and like baby diaper and vinegar. Like hell yeah, 10 out of 10. Which would never happen in gin.
You put vinegar in anything in a whiskey, and like, no, I don't want that.
People
are like lactic blue cheese and like mezcal. People are like yay, and there's spirits drinkers are like heaving in the garbage can. It's funny to see how those different like
briny and meaty all at the same time, and we love it. Whiskey guys are just like
no. Which it is funny because I feel like whiskey guys, they want, if you put anything remotely like quirky in your review notes, it's like, oh yeah, right, you're telling me that you get hot tamales candy. I'm like, dude, it's hot tamales candy. It's like cinnamon and sugar essentially. Yeah. You're not telling me you get.
It's so funny.
I always put the most ridiculous shit in mind.
Yeah, that's the goal.
You are pretty illustrious. We always joke because we get one post a month at Our Bourbon that's like I think tasting notes are bullshit, and they're like, how can you taste brown sugar and vanilla and cinnamon? And then
clearly you've never eaten an apple pie.
Have you?
Sir, have you ever been to Thanksgiving and gone to the dessert table?
It's so funny. But yeah, I mean, this is really nice. I had last year's, I forget which last year's Rolling Fork was sourced from that you guys had, but that was good too. But
this year, I feel like if you're somebody who has ever had any of the like MGP American whiskeys, like the Bull Run stuff, or any of the like 10+ year MGPs, and thought they were great, this is a super easy lateral move for you. I mean, the profile is very close, both in mouthfeel, and there's just a lot of similar notes. I mean, the big fat caramel and vanilla, they exist in there just like they would in a 10+ year old bourbon or American whiskey. I mean, it's
a pretty
this
sweet
stuff is
sticker,
money.
too.
Yeah, that's nice.
I didn't realize. I was looking, I was like, oh wait, that's a Seelbach sticker. That's
There's one on one of the other bottles too.
That,
I think the Duality has one too, right?
They should all have it. Well, no. So the Watershed just has Seelbachs.
The Watershed's on the neck. Yeah.
I don't think we could fit that. But then the Duality.
It looks classy though on the Watershed.
Yeah. It does. It blends in. It is right where the Guild would have been on the.
Exactly.
On the stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's also kind of interesting to see how. I'm not trying to like take over somebody's label, but they'll kind of do it a little bit differently. Some will give you. It's kind of like hey, Buffalo Trace is going to give you a medallion. Four Roses is going to give you the side label. So pick your poison there a little bit.
I appreciate that they're classy too. Like this is not some like tattoo artist like shenanigans. Like shenanigans, I think is the best word I have for it. Like.
See, I've always I feel like I'm not creative enough to do like crazy stickers anyway, and so I'm just like I'm not gonna. It is funny because I've on a Breaking Bourbon, like they have a new riff pick called Riffler's Mom, and that sticker was the only time I've ever had somebody try to just buy a sticker from us.
You're kidding.
Yeah, no, it's kind of new. So I was like, we can't just sell you a sticker. He's like, I'm like, you don't want the bottle? He's like, no, I'll just take the sticker. Like, no, we're all out. I'm sorry.
So we're all up, but we have some stuck to bottles if you want to buy them.
Yeah.
You can buy any other bottle, and I will stick the sticker to
it.
Sir, here is a vodka from North Dakota that you're gonna love with the Riffler's Mom sticker.
Holy shit! So let's take a few minutes of Q&A here. If you guys want to hit up Blake with any questions, or for Jay and I, throw those in the chat here while we wrap up on sipping these. These are all, well, I guess they wouldn't all be single barrels, right? The Duality.
No, they're all single barrels. Yeah.
Yeah, Duality would be too.
Oh, okay, so Duality is just two that are combined, right?
Yeah. Chris Stormer asked, how often do I pass on whiskey for Seelbachs? Private barrels or just in general? I mean, we get quite a few. My Gmail folder for distillery inquiries is pretty packed. But it's a hard balance because there are some where it's like, it's just I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this distillery. I don't feel great about it. We can't really get behind it. And then there's others who I do want to work with, but it's just time in the day and time on the site, and we have a lot of things going on, so we'll eventually get in. So I mean, I pass on whiskey pretty much every day almost at this point, where not to say that they're bad or they don't deserve to be on Seelbachs, like nothing like that at all. It's just
if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit.
If it doesn't fit, yeah, exactly.
Man, is that rum for sale on Seelbachs right now?
It is, yeah. So I'm
gonna grab a link to it and put it in the chat here. People are gonna have to scoop that up. That's really good.
Let's see. We should still have some left.
I know I got an email about it last week.
Yeah, we did Friday. It rolled out.
Friday. Okay. The days.
What is so? Okay, we still got.
Would it be under Seelbach Select here?
If I tagged it right, maybe, but I'll just put it in the chat.
We'll dig it up and post it on there later on.
Jordan asked a good question. What is a Seelbach? So Seelbach is a cocktail made at the Seelbach Hotel in Louisville, Kentucky. And so basically, bar manager there went to the basement. So the Seelbach Hotel is a very historic, like Al Capone stayed there. All these presidents have stayed there. And the bar manager went to the basement, found this old menu, and it had the Seelbach cocktail on it. So he recreated it. It was a huge hit. Everybody loved it. And then a couple of years ago, he came out and said, "Oh, by the way, I made that whole story up. Like there was no menu. It was a cocktail that I created." And so that's kind of
money.
The general idea is like there's a lot of just made up stories here. So we try to dig through who's actually making it, and like, we're not for or against sourcing or anything, but like we're only for transparency. So as long as you're going to be transparent and talk about where it comes from and everything, we're all for that.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And 50 American distillery brands tried to hire him that next day.
Yeah, exactly.
To roll their
now works for marketing at a very major place that you all.
Which I need to look him back up. I traded Twitter DMs with him a few times over the years. At first, I was like, "That's a great story. I want to interview him for Bourbonr." And then I was like, "Hey, I'm kind of thinking about naming a website after that. So could I talk to you about it?" And we never ended up chatting. I need to look him back up and see if I can.
If he hasn't looked you up, I guess it's okay. That's good enough. You may as well call that permission.
Yeah, I feel like he's okay with it at this point. He had moved on from Seelbach Hotel anyway.
That's so funny.
What craft distilleries would you like to work with for a private selection? So there's a few. So Mayor Pingree is they're up there on the list. I actually want to do a J. Henry because they have some older barrels.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's a couple others that kind of have that we're working on where I think there's a lot of older barrels out there that people don't realize exist. There's oh shoot, I'm gonna blank on the name, but a distillery out of Colorado where hold on, I'm gonna give the actual name. They so it's batch 206. They actually have like some 6 and 7 year old bourbon, and he sent me some samples, and it was just fantastic. So that's the kind of stuff that I really love, where sometimes the distiller doesn't even know, like, hey, what are we going to do with this? And try to get that in there. Detroit Distillery, been trying to work with them. And Frey Ranch is up there as well. I think what they're doing is fantastic. So trying to get a barrel from them as well. There's a lot. 291 is really good. See, Bourbon in the Masses is not a fan. But no, I did say batch 206, which is the one. But yeah, he sent me a barrel, and it basically was just called Untitled Bourbon, and it was 7 years old, and it was really good. So yeah. Free shipping code CON40. I don't know if we have that coming up. We did that for Bourbon Heritage Month. And
you should have already placed your orders, is what he's telling you.
Yeah, you are late.
My kids didn't get to eat lunch that week. They just had
CON40, look at you.
Look at you, man. Taking the food from the children?
Man, what a guy.
Shameful.
Just kidding. No. We may have something. That actually gets harder and harder because you'd think the more you ship with UPS, the better rates you get, and they're like, oh, hold on, this is alcohol, we need to charge you this. Actually, like, okay, so we're trying to keep shipping rates low here, so
the idea is that they get lower over time.
No, we're heading in the opposite direction at times, but
that's like FedEx the other day. They're like, hey, you're a preferred customer, and your rates went up. And I was like, son of a bitch. Like,
I'd like to be unpreferred. How do I get back to
that? How do
I like it better when you didn't like me?
Demote me to peon again, please. Like,
pretend you don't know me, okay?
That whole thing, even with FedEx, it's like, oh yeah, no, we appreciate everything you're doing, and so here's what we'd like to propose to you. Like, so this sounds worse. I don't know about you, but like I now have to pay for pickups, and I know.
Oh yeah. More expensive doesn't sound better.
Your rates went up, but here's a $5 coupon. I'm like, that doesn't make sense at all. Like,
But did you know you could get $10 off every $1,000 you spend on your American Express? I'm like, still doesn't sound like a deal.
This sounds like it was cooked up between you and Amex.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Good deal. Blake, I want to thank you, man, for coming on. This is awesome. These are like some crazy ass things that I don't think they would have been on my radar otherwise. So I appreciate that you're doing these picks and that you're offering them through Seelbach for everybody to get a hold of them.
Especially the Chino. That's wild.
Yeah, dude. That's weird, and it's the right kind of weird too.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate y'all having me. Anytime I get an audience to talk about some of the funkier things that we're doing, it's greatly appreciated. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely, man.
It is.
So if
great.
you guys go ahead, Jay.
Go ahead. No,
you got this. I need to drink some of this.
Oh, we're gonna make Murray. Okay. And how about you? Yeah.
Not right now.
I mean, great. Sorry, John got me hooked on Letterkenny like 2 weeks ago, and I'm all the way through it. Now I can't stop talking about it.
I made him watch like 10 seasons of TV in like 2 weeks.
I think it was. I messaged you like, was it earlier today? I was like, McMurray's the best, and you're like, okay, you know.
This guy gets it.
Yeah, how are you now? But yeah, thanks, Blake. This was awesome. This has been October's Craft Corner with Seelbach, which is super fun. The duality is something I don't know that I knew it existed before today, so I'm grateful to, you know, even with as much as I drink, it's kind of surprising when I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that distillery existed, which is, I should probably not tell people because that, you know.
Yeah, discredit.
Like this guy knows nothing. Anyways.
No, but I think that's the cool thing about it is like people who are very invested in like researching and everything, there's still cool things to be discovered, and that's the exciting part.
Yeah, and that's the most fun. And that's like, even when I move into other spirits, it's finally like, you know, wow, you know, it's nice to live in a world where there's always something new to discover, and that's happening in whiskey now. So I'm grateful for that opportunity. Super fun. You can find me and my work at Take.Review. Same with Instagram and Twitter. Our selection for our bourbon through Penelope, the blend, is being delivered this week. So I think by the end of month we should see that going. But which I'm kind of pumped for. Those labels look sweet. So I think that's all that I have. Thanks, guys. And John, why don't you take us home?
Very good, guys. Thanks for coming in, everybody who checked it out. You really do seriously got to check out seelbachs.com, pick these up. That rum, I think, is something special too. I'm going to add that to my next Seelbach order too, because I'm going to need more than one of those. Hopefully it's not already sold out, Blake, right?
We're good. We got a little bit left.
Perfect. You can find me at TheBourbonFinder.com or at TheBourbonFinder on Instagram. And we'll see you guys next week with Weekly Whiskey with Dan K. We're going to mix up some crazy-ass cocktails and have a good time.
Verda.
So, until then, Verda.